All right, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Cheryl, roll call.
Joe Burton.
Here.
Dennis Gagnon.
Here.
Peter Lewis.
Here.
Laura O'Connell. Neil Tobin.
Here.
Heidi Wendell. Here. Neil Zuckerman.
Here, although you wouldn't know it because there's no name tag in front of me tonight, so I am Neil Zuckerman. I'm your chair tonight, host tonight. Thank you very much, and welcome to the September meeting. Hope everyone had a relaxing summer. We have a busy agenda tonight, but we'll hopefully get through it expediently. Thanks to my first vice chair who did a magnificent job last month in July. So we'll have a quick approval. There's a lot of feedback tonight. Is it me? It's like very, yeah, okay. All right, we'll approve the minutes from July. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Edits, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, abstentions, motion passes. Okay, the highly controversial Polhemus Manitou Station project. Can I get any, Ron? Roy?
Yeah, the board has previously accomplished all necessary administrative and procedural responsibilities. So you now have before you a draft approval resolution for consideration tonight.
Okay. Do you want to move the approval resolution, please?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Any comments? None. All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Congratulations, sir and ma'am. You.
Box, escrow.
Oh, thank you. I totally skipped over the escrow. Sorry. I'll go back to the escrow refunding. Sorry. Cheryl, you want to just update us on this escrow request from Bach, please? Apologies.
They have just submitted a letter requesting the refund of any remaining escrow, and they were approved on May 18th, 23 is when you signed
Okay.
the resolution.
Ron, any reason why we wouldn't return escrow?
No, I think all fees have been paid.
Okay. All right. Do you need a motion on that? Yep. Okay. Motion to return the escrow to Bach, please.
I make the motion.
Thank you, Heidi. Second. Thank you. Any comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Thank you very much. Kozlowski and Effle. There they are. Hello, sir. And look, I'm sorry I wasn't here last month, but thank you, or last time, but thank you for your thoughtfulness in taking the board's commentary. I think that's the role of government, is to just do a little prodding and pushing where it's valuable, and you heard us, and we appreciate that, so thank you for that. Ron, any comments on this?
No, again, the board has resolved all administrative and procedural requirements, so you now have before you an approval resolution on the matter.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion to approve the Kozlowski and Effle project?
So moved.
I'm going to let Peter have that motion. Anyone want a second?
I'll second.
All right, were you the first? Sorry.
Me? No.
Yeah. Oh, it was Peter. I thought so. Okay. All right. Great. Second. Any comments on this? Anyone want to say anything? No. Okay. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed. Abstention. Motion passes. Congratulations. Best of luck. It's a nice turn of events. All right. We're going to skip Vasta tonight because they've pulled Hudson Highlands Reserve. What year is this? Okay.
Glenn rode his motorcycle down. Did you see that?
What? Funny. Okay. Steve, why don't you just give us an update of what we're going to talk about this evening, please?
You've reached the point where the board is ready to address the preliminary subdivision approval resolution. You should have before you the draft preliminary subdivision resolution that Ron prepared. As you can see, it left a lot of placeholders as far as the things that are to be satisfied before the preliminary subdivision approval is met. For example, naming of the conservation easement holder, submission of the HOA guidelines and so forth. These are things that will be checked off by the consultants as they come in, excepting, of course, the conservation easement holder, which this board will have to adopt a resolution on when the time comes.
Okay, I'm gonna hold you, sir,
I
for one.
didn't catch the last thing. Could you repeat the last thing you said? I'm having trouble hearing you a little.
Could you pop, his
The last
mic?
thing I said was, this board will still have to adopt a resolution approving the conservation easement holder.
So this is a preliminary adoption. I'd like to give the floor to our town deputy supervisor and liaison to the planning board, just for a couple of commercial announcements.
Good evening, everybody. Bob Flaherty, Deputy Supervisor, Town of Philipstown. As you know, there's been a lot of controversy about who's going to hold an easement for your subdivision up there and so forth. I know you approached us a couple months ago regarding the town board taking it over. And we've been just getting a lot of favorable emails from a bunch of people in the community as well, thinking it's a good idea to the town holding an easement. We had a brief discussion between myself and the supervisor, and I think we'll be in favor of taking on that easement as well. So I think we do from preliminary support, like we have preliminary support from most members of the board to get it passed. So just want to let everyone know, be aware of that.
Just to be clear, when you say take it on as well, do you mean that the town is going to be the primary holder? Because the way it's set up now, there'd be another conservation easement holder and the town would have
Right.
enforcement rights.
Yeah, we would have some additional support with, you know who,
The
right?
town going to hold the conservation easement?
Yes.
Okay.
As I understand the theory, it was the town would hold the easement and a third party would, quote-unquote, administer it on behalf of the town, meaning the checking of it. Bob's not going to go out and walk the property and check on the easement.
No,
Unless
the
you
town
want to.
board would have to approve all that, and then it would have to come back to this board for final approval.
Okay, we'll do what we need to do that. I mean, like I said, I'm only speaking for myself, but I do believe we have support from the other members of the town board to do this.
And how does the applicant feel about that?
Well, I would think they'd be in favor to us, because they came to us a few months ago with that, approached us a few months ago with that idea. So I don't know, the applicant would have to speak to that for themselves.
Can you hear me? I want to make sure the mic's working. Or should I? Yeah, well, I always have to do this, you know. Yeah. Yeah, here we go. And then we'll have to drop it. Good evening, Judson Siebert, Keenan Bean PC, on behalf of the applicant. And the town code actually contemplates one of two things, either the town, through the town board, taking the conservation easement, or in the alternative, a third party. So we have approached the town board. We're in favor of either option, but if the town board's prepared to do it, we support that completely.
Yeah, look, I think it's not a secret to say that this project has brought out lots of commentary from the public over many years in different topics, and the most recent topic has been the quality of the easement holder. This group has not weighed in on any opinion on that, and so we don't have a viewpoint, but we've read the notes, and so I'm not commenting
And,
one way
Mr.
or
Chairman,
other.
quite frankly, the way the preliminary approval is drafted, that will be decided before we
Understood.
get to final. So it'll be either the
Understood.
town board, and if it comes down to having to weigh the merits of a third party, we would be happy to bring the third party here to, you know, for
Understood.
one-to-one with the board, but in terms of the specific question about the town taking it, we support that.
Okay,
Yep.
good, that's very helpful, thank you. Did Glenn sir, your name again is, sir? Judson, thank you. Judson or Glenn, did you want to say anything? I know you put up your board. Is there something you want to?
I'd like to see you work through the resolution and see where we go.
All right, well,
We'll answer any questions you
We
have.
reviewed the draft resolution, quite frankly. It aligns with all of the prior secret review conducted by this board.
The microphone.
Doing it again. We reviewed the draft resolution. From our perspective, it aligns completely with the prior secret review, the secret findings that have been conducted by this board. And as a preliminary approval, it has conditions that we'll have to satisfy before final. We're going to put us through our paces to get there. But we have no comments on the the resolution is drafted.
Steve, anything you want to add at this point?
No, unless you want to hear from Ron on the resolution. I'm
Definitely
assuming everybody
wanna
read
come to
through it.
Ron next, don't worry. Ron, the air is yours, go ahead.
Yeah. The resolution you have before you tries to summarize all the actions that have been taken to date to get to this point in time. It summarizes all prior actions that you've accomplished, public hearings, requirements of other agencies, including the town board, to grant the necessary approvals from their side. And then it goes through every condition or commitment that's been made by the applicant throughout the seeker process. And it grants preliminary subdivision approval and conditions any action on final subdivision approval on the satisfaction of all the many conditions that are identified therein. So I think it's ready for the board's consideration.
I think it'd be useful, Ron, given the attention on this matter, if you wouldn't just mind rattling off the major items that are between preliminary and final, not the typical ones, but the ones that are particular for this situation. Just think for the public's value, whether here tonight or watching this tape, to have a viewpoint. So could you mind just enumerating those, please?
Sure. The town board has a variety of actions that they must address as part of the approval that the applicant requires. Those are identified. It's the issue of the conservation easement, the formation of a sewage works corporation, and acceptance of the HOA bylaws, things of that sort. It separately identifies actions that the planning board has to accomplish, which goes into a great many issues that come out of the conservation regulations themselves. The planning board similarly has to identify a qualified conservation easement holder, which has been the subject of much discussion. And then there's a variety of lot issues, be it the setting of yard requirements that will apply to this project since it's a conservation subdivision. And again, it's the acceptance of the HOA documents, various commitments that the applicant has made in terms of requiring all homeowners to join, the various commitments that apply to the individual lot developments. It lists or tries to summarize all the outside agency approvals that are necessary, which include DOT, DEC, Putnam County Health Department, the Town Conservation Board, and then obviously resolution or acceptance of the final construction drawings that are ultimately prepared, acceptance of the SWIP documents. And again, as I said, every commitment that's made by the applicant with respect to overall site disturbance, lot development, anything of that sort has been summarized in this document.
And related to that, is there a time frame upon which these things have to be satisfied?
No, not at all. This just grants preliminary subdivision approval, and the key issue with respect to granting that, from the applicant's perspective, is it then allows him to actually file applications with the outside agencies to seek their approvals. Those agencies will not accept or entertain an application until preliminary subdivision has been granted by this board.
Good. All right, that's very helpful. Board members, before I call the vote, I just thought you may want to ask Ron additional questions on this resolution, given the magnitude of this conversation, which, as we all know, is our first formal conservation subdivision in this community. And for those who've been in this board a long time, I think every one of us has been involved at some point in its tenure, but Joe having the least fun over the many years. But I remember when Glenn and I almost lost one of our lives hiking that I think closer to his heart was challenged by that first hike about it. But anyway, we spent a lot of time on this topic. So any questions for Ron, please? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about C, the C2, the requirements and controls on the 163 acres of protected land to be part of the conservation easement shall assure that the following functions are accomplished, and then it has a bunch of bullets. Is that going to be actually spelled out somewhere? What like protect important habitat and wildlife corridors? Is that going to be spelled out somewhere?
It would be expected that would be in the conservation easement and/or the HOA documents.
Both?
Yep.
Okay. another question I have is, let's see, it's so at the top of page 5, basically, where it says total lawn area shall be no more than 2,000 square feet per residential lot. Was that in the finding, is that, I assume that's not new in this document, but I didn't recall whether, because I was under the impression that there would be less lawn area than that, but was that spelled out already previously?
Yeah, that specifically came out of the EIS process.
Okay. That's it. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Other questions for Ron? Please, sir.
Not for Ron, but could I go back to the easement holder?
Absolutely.
If the town were the easement holder, then the advisor that Bob was mentioning, helping the town with the easement, are we going to be able to speak with them and learn a little something about them as well?
So let's not for Bob, I think that's for Steve. So Steve, just, I guess the question is, can you just talk about procedures for our approval, if there is such, for the easement holder?
Yes, the conservation easement itself will come back before the board if the town takes the easement. You really don't have the authority to say that the holder of the easement is unacceptable. It's right in your code that the town could be the holder. You do get to look at the terms of the easement, and that would include, I would expect, if the town is going to have someone enforce it for them, I would expect they'd be named in the conservation easement, otherwise they wouldn't have a right to go on the property and inspect and so forth. So you'll be given an opportunity to take a look at it and see who's involved and how it's gonna work.
Sorry, to be clear, that sounds like that's to be we're being informed, but we don't have a right to assess. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if the town is the holder, you can't say that the town is not a suitable holder for the conservation easement, because it's right in your code, the town can be.
Got it.
But the terms and provisions within the conservation easement will come back before you when they come back for final, a subdivision approval. And you'll be able to review the document at that time, and you'll have a statement, a memo from me saying it's an acceptable form, and, you know, we don't have any problem with the terms. Of course, you ultimately get to decide that, but, you know, you'll have a memo from us on that, and you'll be able to review it and ask any questions you like.
So what I heard you say, and maybe because your question was specific, Peter, you said, do we get to evaluate effectively the administrator of it? And the answer I'm hearing is no, because the town would be holding the easement.
Yeah, if you don't like the terms as written in the conservation easement, you can say, it would have to be something really out there for you to say it's unacceptable, but you could certainly say, I want to see it rewritten this way, I want to see it rewritten that way. You know, I'm sure we can come to a document that satisfies the board at the end of the day.
Great.
I was really more just wanted to be introduced to them, to at least know who it was.
Well, I expect that'll be written
more
right
than
in the document.
Passing judgment or anything like that.
Yeah, you'll find out.
Assuming that would be the first paragraph is who's administering it for them, yeah. Good. Good questions. Other questions? Other questions? No? No? Okay, hearing none. Can I have a motion then for providing preliminary subdivision approval for Hudson Highlands Reserve?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Dennis. Second.
I'll second.
Okay, second. Any comments, questions? None? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 2. Okay. Well, as I've said before, sign of a good board is a lack of unanimity. Sign of a bad board is unanimity at times. So I think that says this is a working board and we can have different opinions and still make government work. So congratulations on this major milestone. I think you've been patient, you've listened, and progress has been made in support of both property rights and community rights. So thank you for that patience and that help. Okay, next up, Garrison Golf Course / Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. Tonight we're going to talk about the FEIS as a value. Yeah, thank you, Ulysses. Good luck. We'll see you at some point. Okay, FEIS, we have an evaluation by AKRF and Ron as to the completeness of the document. Sir, questions? No, just ready to go? Okay, great. Every time I see you, I realize my ties are too wide, because you always have the skinnier ties, and I'm reminded, given that so few people wear ties these days. I've had the privilege of 3 board meetings in 2 days, so the tie is like a return back to pre-COVID era. Anyway, so I think we're going to talk about the FEIS completeness. I think, Aaron, you have the floor to give us some commentary, if you will.
All right. So you had your public hearing on the draft EIS. Several comments were made in writing and at the hearing. The purpose of the final EIS is to take those, for one, it's to incorporate by reference the draft EIS again, memorialize any changes that have taken place to the project since the draft EIS was public. There are a couple minor things that are noted in the memo that they've discussed in the FEIS. One of them is the entrance driveway off Route 9. At the request of DOT, they're going to be shifting that a little bit to the south, one of the lanes, which will slightly increase the wetland buffer disturbance, not by much, but that doesn't change the action. It still requires a wetland permit. I believe that's the most substantial change in the site plan. They also did some additional analysis to cover a rainwater collection question that Ron had they do have plans to use rainwater collected to help with toilet flushing, I believe. So there was some additional analysis done to address Ron's comments on the capacity of the cistern and whether or not they have enough data to show that they can do that. So that's presented in the FEIS. And then following that is the response to all the comments that were received. So that includes comments, not the ones that necessarily are in favor of the project. Those are all in the appendix.
Just hold on a
Sure.
second. We got to quiet the Hudson Highland Reserve people from celebrating.
Okay. There were several comments in support. Those aren't responded to. They're just put into the record. Any questions or comments on the analysis do get incorporated into the FEIS record, and they responded to each of those in the document. So Ron and I went through all of those responses. We have some minor comments. I don't think they're anything major. There are some similar to how we went through the reserve project. That we do want to make sure this document's in the voice of the board, neutral voice, et cetera. So we can work with the applicant to get some edits done on several responses I noted in the memo that have some questionable voice things. We'll work on that. Otherwise, some editorial revisions we're requesting, some additional information. And most importantly, there's 2 issues that the board, I think, should discuss tonight. One is for the water and well withdrawal issues and questions and concerns that came from the public.
Just hold on a second. It's very echoey in here, so. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. 2 issues I think the board should discuss that are in the FEIS. One is with regard to the water withdrawal concerns. The applicant put together a protocol for responding to water drawdown complaints from a radius around the project. They also came up with a protocol to address noise complaints during operation of the project. So those 2 pieces of information, if you're okay with what they say, could end up as conditions of any approval here, and they would bind the applicant to follow those protocols as the project is under operation. So I called attention to those in the memo, and I think, if the applicant has something to say about, what they've prepared, they can, but I was hoping the board could focus on those 2 protocol things, because Ron and I reviewed them. We helped the applicant develop some of that. We did give them some feedback before you got the document, but you haven't seen it or talked about it yet, so I think it's worth doing.
Ron, would you like to add anything?
No, I think it's generally been covered from my perspective.
Okay, Steve, why don't you just remind us for the board in terms of the process we're in, where we are in the process and the role of the FEIS and what we're doing this evening?
Sure. As far as secret review goes, you start out with an environmental assessment form, an EAF, and I'm sure you all remember that with the Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 in it as far as that goes. And that helps you reach a determination as to whether there are potential significant adverse environmental impacts or not. If you determine there are, then you require preparation of an environmental impact statement, an EIS. In this case, you did determine that there were potential significant adverse environmental impact statements, and so you required that the EIS process be carried out. And first you were submitted a draft, well, first there was a scope to determine what issues would be addressed in the EIS, and then there was submission of a draft environmental impact statement, which addressed all the identified potential significant adverse environmental impacts. And then you held a public hearing on the DEIS. And that's where you are right now. The next step is preparation of the FEIS, and what the FEIS does is it looks at every comment that was made at the public hearing and by your consultants, and it addresses them. And it says either this was addressed adequately in the DEIS, or this requires further comment, or perhaps it says that this comment is irrelevant or just doesn't touch on issues that are in the scope or what have you. But all of the comments that were made at the public hearing and by your consultants have to be addressed, and addressed adequately, in the document that's called the Final Environmental Impact Statement, the FEIS. And they've submitted an initial FEIS, and your consultants, and I'm sure the board, of course, took a look at it, the big binders that came to you. And they've received feedback now as to whether they have adequately addressed every comment or not, and what additional information they need. And they're going to go back and revise their FEIS and resubmit it. And hopefully it takes care of all the items that have been pointed out by your consultants. If they satisfactorily do that, you will adopt the FEIS, and then you will go on to adopt a finding statement. The finding statement touches on all of the potential significant adverse environmental impacts that have been identified, and it addresses whether they've been mitigated to the maximum extent practicable or not. And depending on how that comes out, you'll go on to consider granting the approvals. Now, in this particular case, once the SEQRA process is done, you will not immediately proceed to consider grant of the approvals, because they have to go back to the town board to get an amendment to their PUD. So you're going to get to the end of the SEQRA process, and then you're going to come to a full stop. Will they go to the town board? Then once they're done with their business there, they'll come here, and you can consider going on.
Okay, board members, questions on the commentary by AKRF or Ron in the memo, because our consultants have advised us that the FEIS is incomplete, but there may be some value in anything you've seen in the FEIS as worthy of conversation. Obviously, Aaron has highlighted two topics, not surprisingly, around water and noise, which are two of the weightier topics, and one I think we would all have noticed that we've received letters around both those topics, and I don't think that's a coincidence. So, commentary from anyone? Questions, thoughts? Please, Heidi.
Well, I was wondering why the 2-year limit? I mean, it seems like from what we've heard, and also just common sense would indicate that 2 years is not long enough. I mean, there could be changes in the performances, and there could be, changes in the development around the site and water levels. I mean, we know water levels are changing all the time. I don't know why we should accept a 2-year limit unless is there some reason why that limit should be part of the plan? It seems sort of to go against common sense to me.
Okay, thoughtful. Other comments from board members on that very point?
I had that same concern. Why is really the big question. Why is it 2 years? Is that some type of condition
Well, let me turn it back to you guys, because I hear you, and I tend to agree with you. What would you think is inappropriate? It's our document, not. So what would you guys think?
What happens 5 years from now? All of a sudden, the venue changes to some extent.
I agree.
And there's a
So what do you
rock
think?
concert.
Should it be no time limit? Should there be a time limit? What do you think?
I don't think there really should be a time limit for complaints.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think it should be open.
I see. Joe, are you nodding your head too? Because there's a lot of unanimity on that point. Okay. Okay. Aaron, maybe are you the author of said 2 years?
Not necessarily. The applicant came, the applicant proposed that.
Who be the author of said 2 years? Here he is, skinny tie guy.
So, you know, I understand, you know, the concern with these two issues. We just felt that there need to be some limit put in place so the applicant isn't forever on the hook for paying for water studies, for paying for noise complaints. Once it's established that the use of, you know, certain types of performances of, you know, of the type that HCSF has been doing for the past 2 years at this site, and its water use, which should not change dramatically and which is being planned for, you know, at a maximum level that is not projected to actually be used. You know, we conducted pumping tests at 3 times the maximum level that would ever be used on the site. So, you know, from the point of view of the applicant, we just want some point after which it will have been established, you know, the types of performances and the type of water use that will give the neighbors some certainty about, you know, what the impact of this project is going to be.
Based on that, then the applicant shouldn't really have any concern if there is no time limit. You're saying the applicant is going to take care of whatever has to be done, so.
We're not anticipating any impacts, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to cost money to respond to complaints, whether they have to do with the facility or not.
3 years from now, well, where it runs dry, for whatever reason. I mean, how is that going to, you know, it affects homeowners, neighbors, so.
If a well runs dry 3 years from now and it's through, and there's been no change in those 3 years about the water use from the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival, why should it continue to be the responsibility of the Shakespeare Festival, you know, area-wide to chase down?
Oh, I agree that if the Shakespeare Festival is not the culprit, but what if they are?
I mean,
What if it's determined that, for whatever reason, larger venues are happening, larger productions are happening, more people, more events, same thing with noise?
I mean,
Those are the main concerns that the community has, so we're addressing it.
Right. So with respect to noise, you know, whether or not there's a complaint protocol, the facility will forever be required to meet the town noise code. So the difference between a complaint protocol and no protocol is that it's on the applicant for those first few years, and we're open discussing what, you know, what the right time period is, but where the applicant is the one responsible for paying for the noise studies to be done. Whereas if there's a noise complaint in the town now, it's not on the property owner who's causing the noise or allegedly causing the noise to pay for his neighbor's study to figure out whether there's a noise complaint.
Question to Aaron. Is the intent that they would pay for a noise study because of a noise complaint?
That's what
Or is there a protocol
Yeah.
that if somebody picks up the phone and says, stop it?
So they've proposed in that 2-year window that they've offered to do, to take care of the cost of investigating the complaint with taking measurements at the property line, measurements with, you know, with regard to the closest neighbor, whoever made the complaint. And then if they have to work on things to mitigate it because they're showing an issue where it's exceeding the code requirements, it's on their dime as well to correct it. So they've offered that, they just don't want to go beyond 2 years of doing that, based on the fact that they think after a couple of years of performances from May through October, consistently roughly the same type of performances according to them, that would be a good sample size, it sounds like. But this is what they're proposing. Ron and I discussed it also and thought that if complaints were to come in afterwards, they would have to tell us what's changed, you know, since those initial 2 years, what's changed in programming, if you're doing more loud concerts, you have more capacity, things like that. That's what we thought could be a possible solution, but, you know, ultimately the town has to decide how long they want to see this go for.
The other thing that we propose with respect to water is that you have an initial 2-year period which covers the first build-out, the theater and, you know, the area around the theater. And then the second phase, which deals with artist lodging. After the second phase is 50% complete, we would engage with the town to figure out whether it makes sense to have another round of the complaint protocol, or whether, you know, what would need to be done after that point where you've got additional water use that's being built.
Aaron, I have a question to you. When would this time start, the clock start?
Starts, the way it's written now is it starts from commencement of the COO for the permanent theater.
When, for the theater, not the
Yeah.
entire project?
That's
'Cause
right.
This is a long-term.
Well, that's first phase.
This is a long-term project.
Phase one is the theater. Yeah. Well, the structure, not the tent, the permanent theater structure. The new one, not the temporary theater arrangement that they have now. But beginning at the C of O for that, which is phase one, and 2 years thereafter. That's what they've proposed.
Okay, my question really would be, why not when the entire project is done?
Well, I think the only other.
The housing portion?
The housing portion is the other phase, the later phase that.
Yeah, well, there are concerns also from neighbors about the talent, I guess, maybe being noisy at night, maybe after a performance, things like that, so.
I think one way, well, the applicant can speak on this, but they've, at our recommendation too, in the comments, was that can you impose some kind of, you know, quiet hours restriction after performances for those on-site lodging facilities, so that, you know, there's some kind of rule in place for after a certain time, it's gotta be quiet. I mean, they've proposed that. They didn't really lay out the times, but they're willing to do that.
One of AKRF's comments back to us this week was, you know, can there be, what are the times going to be for the quiet hours on the artist lodging? And what we're going to propose is 10:30 to, you know, which is around the time the performances end, to 8 in the morning. The other thing I wanted to mention about water that might help, well, two answers here. One is about why not wait until everything is built out to start monitoring, and the answer is that the artist lodging is sort of dependent, and the timing on the artist lodging is sort of dependent on when the festival gets funding for that, so it may be quite a long time before the artist lodging starts getting built out. The other thing I wanted to mention with respect to water was that the festival will be metering its water use, and that could be something that continues to be provided to the town after the complaint protocol is over, so that the town at least has an idea of what's going on and would be able to see if anything, if there's any, you know, uptick in water use because we've got more attendees or more events or something.
I think I understand why, I'm just still questioning the 2 years.
Yeah, well, look, that's before I go to you, Peter, let me just, so, I guess this is for Steve. So, Steve, the protocol that's being proposed is in the FEIS, correct?
This is written in, what's proposed here in, just above paragraph 15?
Yeah, well, the protocols for noise, for example, starts on page 50. It's, the comment notes the page it's on in the FEIS, but it has, the full protocol is not in our memo, it's in the FEIS itself.
It's not, or it is?
It's in the FEIS.
Okay, so let me finish then my question, which is, if it is in the FEIS, written this way, and we come, ma'am, can you guys take your conversation outside, please? So if you take the 2 years, it's in the FEIS, we accept it as complete, but then this group says, you know, this group then says, that's not enough for us, and we put that in the finding statement, is that okay? Or we have to actually agree to it? We went through this with HHR, and I think we have to be very clear with my colleagues. If it says 2 years and we accept the FEIS, but then this group disagrees with that and puts in the finding statement, no, it should be 5 years or whatever it may be, are we allowed to do that or not?
You are not.
You're not.
If you put in the FEIS that 2 years is acceptable. Now, there's two things going on here and they overlap. The one is in regard to SECRA, where the monitoring period is being offered as part of showing that they've mitigated to the maximum extent practicable the identified impacts of on the noise and water. I'm not sure that's exactly how it fits into the scoping document, but still, that's what they are. And the other is, when you come to actually granting your approvals on this, you have the right to impose reasonable conditions. But If you have a secret document that says 2 years monitoring is adequate, you're going to be very hard pressed in your finding statement to say, well, 3 years, 5 years, oh, it's got to run from when it's finally built out is adequate, because you've already accepted a document as your own,
And
which says that 2 years is acceptable.
Let's just, folks, let's just remember what the last thing Steve just said. This is our document. I know for those remembering with HHR, this is our document. They are authoring it effectively on behalf of us. It's a strange convention to have an applicant authoring something for a board, but that's the process. So this does become ours. So Dennis's question is not really for the applicant as much as for us to accept that or to not accept it and to change it. So
Now, to be clear on that, Neil, I'm sorry to.
No,
I
please,
didn't mean
please.
to- That doesn't mean that you have to decide now in the FEIS if 2 years or 5 years or the time period it begins from is a particular time period. What it means is if they submit an FEIS with 2 years, you have to add a comment to it that this needs further examination, or you feel that it may not be adequate, and then when you make your finding statement based on the entire record, you can come back with something different than 2 years. But if you accept it as written, you're really kind of boxed in.
Does everyone catch that? It's a pretty important note for us. Now, since it is incomplete, we're not going to accept it tonight. That does give everyone another month's homework to go through and see for anything that you feel like individually or we collectively, and we did this last time with HHR, that there are items, and I think these two topics, both noise and water, have been of some, no pun intended, volume from the public in their commentary to us, and therefore I think as a board we have to be mindful of it. Other reactions? Please, Peter.
So, I guess the first one is, the code has noise,
Standards.
parameters. And so, why is this a question? I mean, if they're having a hoopla party and it's making too much noise, you call the sheriff, saying, hey, you're above 400 decibels, and we're closing it down. Why? It seems like that's an answered question already.
Do you want to add to his
Well,
question?
If I'm not mistaken, the ordinance would deal with time frame. So no noise or a certain level after, say, 10 o'clock. You got neighbors here that feel as if they're on a ringside seat to the performances.
Commentary from our experts on that, on Peter's question? Peter's question is, does the zoning code or any other statutes cover this topic?
The ordinance is always in effect. So anytime there's a complaint received, there's going to be a response. The time frame that's being offered by the applicant relates to his obligations to evaluate any complaint and respond to the town to advise what their findings are. So the 2-year period actually falls to the applicant to address any complaint received. After that point, and whatever time is set, it then becomes a town responsibility to evaluate and advise the applicant if there's some exceedance of that performance standard. So the applicant has offered 2 years presently, and is for the board to determine if they consider that to be a reasonable period to respond to complaints relative to either noise or water.
Understood. Other comments? Peter, go. Peter, keep going.
Well, this was just to, I guess it kind of follows from that.
Please.
The 2-year period seemed like it kind of made sense to me, because you don't want Shakespeare to be on the hook forever for complaints from, there may be a group of people who are going to, keep complaining. Maybe it should be incumbent upon the complainant to foot some of that bill, or show some proof that some more action should be taken by Shakespeare.
Okay.
That's a comment.
Heidi?
I mean, it just seems, just looking at the draft language, the Shakespeare Festival will be uniquely situated. If somebody complains, say, that their well is run dry, I mean, you can't, to say we're gonna be constrained after 2 years to look at that to ask Shakespeare Festival to look into their water use, similar with the noise. If neighbor, we're already getting complaints from neighbors, I mean, who say it's, you know, kind of insufferable. I mean, if we're constrained to not ask Shakespeare Festival to look into that, it's just an investigation. We're not asking for a new noise study. They just need to investigate the complaint. I think that that's completely fair to have that a continuing obligation, and would be unfair to neighbors not to make it continuing, and because of the unique ability of the festival to actually gather that data.
Helpful. So,
Just to be clear, as I described earlier, the 2-year period makes it incumbent upon the applicant to investigate any complaints received, water, noise. The applicant, after that period, will still be obligated to respond to any town inquiry on such a complaint, so that we can understand if any conditions have changed from their perspective, either in water usage or in noise generation at the site. They'd have to provide information to the town, but then it's the town's responsibility to respond to the applicant and determine if any mitigation is appropriate. So the 2-year period makes it the applicant's responsibility to do those investigations and to provide some written findings to the town.
sir.
Noise study. It's responding to a noise complaint is not like a full noise study, but it does require, the protocol does require that HVSF, you know, hire a noise consultant to come out at the property line nearest to where the complaint is and measure an event that is meant to replicate the operations at the time of the complaint. So if there's a wedding going on, for instance, at the same time as there's a performance going on, you know, it would involve getting a sound consultant out to measure that sound at the property line. So it's not a full noise study, but it does involve having paying for a consultant to come out and take those measurements.
Other board members' comments?
I tend to agree with Heidi, and I think there has to be some more thought about this, because the 2-year limit on it seems to me that it would just be a matter of running out the clock. And that you've said several times in your several presentations that you expect things to ramp up, and that you're going to sort of grow into this site. It's an ambitious project that you'll have to grow and eventually fill the seats right about the time that the 2-year limit run, right? It's almost like a statute of limitations. I mean, it starts to run out. So I don't know whether it's 5, I don't know whether it's in perpetuity, but I'm just agreeing that we have to put some thought into this about how it's going to operate, because these are very real complaints coming in. I know most of the people that are sending in these complaints, they're not just doing it, they're not making it up. You've been there for 2 years, which I think is good, because it kind of gives everybody an idea of what it's going to be like when you're there, and then when you go to full scale. And so, again, I'm not sure that I have a solution either, but this is interesting, because if you take the project to its logical conclusion, the one that you're presenting, are the neighbors just supposed to accept that this is the new normal, that this is just the way it is? It's tough, because these people are, it's not easy.
No, I wanted to add 2 things there. One is that the current theater, points from where, I don't know if everyone's been there, but it's down by where the restaurant is, and it's pointed up the hill towards the pond and Route 9. The theater, when it's finished, is going to point out towards the river. So some people who are experiencing noise now are not going to experience noise then. The theater is going to be a solid structure as opposed to a tent, and covered on 3 sides with plantings around, year-round plantings around the sides of the thing. So that design has been modeled, and that's what's in the DEIS. And the other thing that I just wanted to reiterate was that the festival can't continue to ramp up noise-wise. Eventually it would hit a point at which it's violating the noise code, and they're not allowed to do that.
All right, other comments? Oh, please, go ahead, keep going.
I'm not sure, you're saying, don't worry because it's gonna go to the crest of the hill and point it out over over the river? Like that, we're supposed to find some comfort in that?
Yes, because the noise, some of the people who have been complaining about the noise are complaining because the current tent is pointed in that direction. When the tent is, and when the structure is completed, which is different than being in a tent, which has no sides on it, the sound is gonna be different, and that's what's been modeled.
They did model, just to add to that, they modeled moderate amplification and then a high amplification level. I think it was 85 decibels and 105 decibels. With the new structure in place in its location where it's proposed, includes all the material that the building's going to be made out of, the propagation of how the propagation will be affected by landscaping, berms, and landscaping, the plantings, and the fact that the opening of the theater does face west as opposed to the current situation of the tent. It doesn't have any attenuating features, pointing more to the south and east. So, the DEIS shows that with the new building, with those loud levels modeled in it, doesn't reach an exceedance of the code at the property line. That's the hard look that they've taken, that the board is obligated to follow for seeker. It's just tough because the complaints that are coming in now, as you said, are coming from a different situation.
Comments? Response? Do you want to say something?
No, I'm gonna think about this.
Okay. Look, any others? Joe, anything? So look, I'm sympathetic, frankly, in both directions, as those who've been students of this board for a while know I try to balance property rights and community rights, and this one's a bit of a struggle for me because the notion that, as my colleague, my fellow Neil just said, the noise complaints are real, and these people are sincere about it, and that's true, and that's a disturbance of quality of life, and yet I think our attorney in front of us is correct. Obviously, what was studied was a different location with a different structure, and we don't know what that would be like. They haven't had any music or otherwise from that new place because it doesn't exist yet. So it's hard to interpret. So all we have is the study, and the only way we can do is judge whether the study is accurate, because amplifying noise from where it is now will not exist. We're not approving the current tent in the valley next to the restaurant. We're approving a different structure. So I myself am sort of caught up, and therefore the only solution is an ongoing solution to monitor and figure out what remedies would be available. So I think we have to really talk about that, and I think Steve's caution is a good one, that before we adopt this FEIS, we have to have a view as a board, and a majority of us have a view about what the remedies could look like. And I think I appreciate between the applicant and our staff to figure out that the multi-year monitoring process is a useful one. That's a good approach. I think we should talk about, and I think we'll continue to talk about as a board, what is sufficient for us. I'm hearing a mixed view among this board. Some, like Peter, think maybe it shouldn't be that long. I'm hearing Dennis and Heidi and Neil say it actually needs to be longer, maybe in perpetuity. We need to come to a viewpoint about that. We need a majority on that view, and we don't have Laura with us this evening either. So I think it's a worthy conversation, and I think, again, as always, I appreciate when the board has a mixed view, because it says we're all thinking about what the issues are. Any other comments on what AKRF has provided to us this evening, and Ron? Again, I think we'll have a second bite at the apple proverbially, because you're going to come back after you take these comments and provide us another rev of the FEIS, and that allows us next month to, again, everyone take out their pencils, sharpen them a little bit more, and make sure they're comfortable. We're not comfortable with elements of the FEIS that we could actually ask for a change. So don't feel like you have to run through the document now. I see Dennis and Heidi have well annotated documents, which I admire and appreciate.
Well, there was one other thing.
Go for it. Floor is yours.
That AKRF had raised, which I believe this is an AKRF, and Ron's comment. Will the festival offer specific days per week and time periods that construction is anticipated? Was that a question that you guys, I mean, I would like to know that. And will there be a commitment to not perform construction activities on weekends and holidays, that type of thing? You know, that seems like another major issue, and probably impacting the very people that are currently writing us letters about the noise. You know, they're gonna be impacted heavily by construction as well, so I'm just, it's another type of noise, basically, but not having to do with the performances.
This will be in the next version of the response to comments that comes back, responding to AKRF's request for more information on that. The applicant is willing to commit to no construction at all on Sundays and holidays, and on Saturdays it's not expected that construction would take place on Saturdays. It's not going to be the norm, but however we want to word that, there would be, I think, sometimes where, depending on the schedule, where they might want to work on a Saturday, but we'd be open to figuring out what the appropriate hours are for that. I think 7 to 3 is what the weekday construction schedules are, but maybe Saturdays 9 to 3 or something like that, if it was going to be on a Saturday.
Other comments? I'm going to make a statement that's just slightly beyond the FEIS, just because I've read, Davis, your letter back to one of the, to Mr. Brenner, who I believe is also in the room here. You're going to be in this property for a long time, unless you get a promotion to another beautiful venue across the country, so you're not going anywhere. That's good. So you're going to be here for a long time. These people are going to be here a long time. I think this is not going to go away, this topic. There will be other, whether it's three-sided and it's solid and it's facing the river, I suspect this will be an ongoing, if not perennial, but this will certainly be an issue that comes up sporadically. I just don't see how it would not. And we were talking yesterday over coffee, and we were reminded of one of our one of our neighbors in town who spoke at, I forget which hearing, a guy named Al Smith, who worked at Columbia Records, I believe. And Al said, if you're successful, which I hope you are, you're going to have bigger and bigger and better things happening there. And those are going to probably be louder. And I just want you to be mindful that's going to be there. And so I just want to make sure we're thinking, again, forget the FEIs for a moment, but more globally, you guys are all going to be around together and figuring how we abate noise as much as possible, I think, is a really important topic. Because whereas water, I can't point to directly that one would not be able to point to, oh, it was Shakespeare that caused the water. The noise will be a directly obvious thing that is caused by the good works you're doing up there. So I think having to figure this out will be something we're all going to have to deal with. And as a planning board, I think we're going to have to put in the strictures that help us provide that support to the community. Ma'am?
I mean, is it ever done that if obviously real life can be different from a study. If it turns out that that neighbors are bothered with the new construction, couldn't the sound just be turned down? Couldn't we have a condition that if it doesn't turn out the way it's been planned, that the amplification can just be turned down so that everybody can be happy? I mean, I would think the audience could still enjoy it a little less loudly, and then the neighbors' lives are not as impacted. Can't that just be part of it?
I'll ask our experts here, because I can't, I mean, that sounds logical, but I don't know how to execute upon that.
Does this come out of the protocol?
Are you guys all flummoxed down there?
At the end of the day, your performance standards, that criteria will apply. So if they're not exceeding that criteria that's been in your code, exists today, then there's no remedy. There can't be any generic issue to just discuss lowering sound volumes below what's in your code.
Good, Joe, please.
But Ron, could you adjust the design in order to attenuate any of the noise surrounding the structure? Could they go back to, creating more of a berm or kind of noise suppressant, some kind of noise attenuation structures to suppress that noise instead of continuing with loud Shakespeare.
Any desire to see further mitigation all comes back to the issue of exceeding your performance standard. So at the end of the day, that issue of noise is going to be dealt with through your code enforcement officer.
Right. Okay.
Their obligation, and currently they've offered 2 years, is that they'll investigate those issues and determine whether it complies or not. So that any complaint received in that period, whatever period you agree to, will be investigated by the applicant and must be responded to. The issue of whether you can apply a standard less than your code ordinance, you don't have any opportunity to do that.
Say more about that phrase, we don't have the opportunity to do that. What does that mean?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
You said you will not have the opportunity to have a lower standard. I didn't understand the term, you do not have an opportunity to, meaning it's not in our purview?
Again, the town code permits noises of a certain level at the property line. So the investigation has to determine whether that's being exceeded or not. That investigation will be conducted by the applicant for whatever period you agree to. And beyond that, it's going to be up to the town, the code enforcement officer specifically, to determine if any exceedances occur, which would then permit the town to mandate some further mitigation.
The unfortunate potential truth, without actually looking at actual numbers, is that it's very quiet in Garrison. And so any sound, even if it's not the number that's in the code, could actually sound like it's really loud and yet be a lot lower than the number. That's a very qualitative comment, but I'm suspecting that's sort of part of the imbalance is whatever numbers are in the code may be a lot louder than maybe what people's delicate ears are in the quiet country that we live in.
Yeah.
So that was that. All right, Peter, please.
Okay, this is just a point of clarification. The 2 to 5 year or whatever test period, I didn't want to have it construed that what I was thinking was after that period of time, whatever we decide on, the public will be muzzled to any comments about the amount of noise. I think the public should be able to talk about that whenever they want to, and the code will always be there for us to look at and be able to make some type of judgment on.
Yeah, I think what Ron said was outside of this period. So let's say it stayed at 2 years. On the 2-year and first day, if someone experienced a noise complaint, Shakespeare would not be running a process, but that person, that community member, could always go to our code enforcement officer and say, it's really loud. Yeah. And that code enforcement officer would go about the trouble, as opposed to the applicant having the responsibility to hire a sound consultant to test it themselves. That's the difference, I think. Anyway, I'm gonna, unless there are other questions or comments?
I have one question.
Please.
About the procedure for, I understand the board needs to think about the 2-year limit versus some other limit versus in perpetuity. We would like to get a determination on completeness at the next board meeting, and so just with that in mind, we're absolutely happy to keep working with the planning board staff in between now and the next meeting to discuss the appropriate time period. You know, I suspect that in the next revision, we can provide a different time period. But my hope would be that at the next meeting, the board could, if that's really the 2 issues that are being discussed again at the next meeting, if the board could come to a decision about what it would take to accept the FEIS as complete, that we could reach a determination on that at the next meeting.
Look, we have a really talented member of the public here named Glenn Watson, who always asks us to do things ahead of doing the thing, and I admire that you learned from his masterful techniques, so I'm not going to agree to that just as a spiritual approach, but I will promise you we're doing this as quickly as we can. As you were here before, Hudson Islands Reserve was in front of this group for almost a decade. This is much faster clip, so we're going to go as fast as we can. I can't promise you that. We will try. What I'd like to do is, what date would you be giving us the revised FEIS, you think?
We're already working diligently on the comments that we got from AKRF last Friday. Based on the discussion that we got tonight, I think we're going to be able to turn in a revised FEIS at the end of next week.
Okay. Well, look, if that comes earlier after your review, Aaron and Ron, I'm happy to have us as a group review it as soon as you have felt comfortable that's complete, and then we'll have a robust conversation like we've done now next time. And if there are no or very minor comments on it, then I think we can take a vote. And if they're more than minor, I'm gonna not take a vote, because.
I wasn't looking for a commitment, I just
No, I
wanted
get
to
it. Hope,
raise
hope,
the
hope, hope
process
springs
issue.
eternal, and we hope for it as well. We're not intentionally bureaucratic, ever.
That's his job.
I know it's his job. He's an advocate for his client, and we admire that and appreciate that. All right, anything else, folks? Oh, oh,
I'm sorry.
go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, so procedurally, technically, right, 45 days from the close of the public hearing is what seeker prescribes for an FEIS adoption. Obviously, that happened already. That was July 14th that time period expired. So I think we have mutual agreement with the applicant that we're extending the FEIS acceptance
The
timeline.
alternative would be to out and out take a vote to reject it as incomplete. Nobody wants to go through that formality. I'm sure you're fine, I don't want to speak for you, you're fine going past the 45 days?
Yes, I think we've already agreed to that, and we'll, repeat our commitment to giving the planning board the time it needs to review the FEIS.
Okay, hearing nothing else. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, appreciate it. All right, let's move on to our final item of business tonight, new business, RKB material. Oh, yeah, sure. Oh my, here we go, this is a big one. Look, you guys should all watch me sign this one. HHR.
Oh. You want a selfie
Yeah.
or something?
Can we take a pause for a second? I'm gonna wait till we're done, okay? I'm gonna sign it. We're gonna have a group picture. All right? I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. All right, Jason, the floor is yours, sir. And now
good
that-
evening.
Now that Glenn has left, you can.
Jason Snyder with Beatty and Watson, representing the applicant, RKB Material LLC. The owner, Richard Barros, is in attendance this evening. What we have here is a 6.6 acre parcel in the town's office commercial industry zoning district. It's on the corners of Horseman's Trail, Skyline Drive, and generally Route 9. It's behind the Cold Spring Mobile Home Park. There's an expressway down here. So this is an amended site plan for from the original site plan, which was in 2012. It was approved in 2012. Generally, it was a contractor's yard. The previous owner was an excavation contractor, and he had approvals for processing soil, rock crushing, soil screening, and there was also provisions in there for the overnight, for parking of some of his construction, off-site construction equipment on site. So with that previous approval, a landscape plan was implemented where a berm was constructed and trees were planted along Horseman's Trail for screening. There was a stormwater pollution prevention plan that was implemented for stormwater runoff. And generally, that was all done in compliance and is still in compliance today with that original site plan approval. The approved Equipment storage is behind the berm, towards the front of the lot. There's,
Would you mind just moving a
Yeah.
tiny bit in that direction? 'Cause I can't actually see anything.
okay.
Thanks a lot, sorry.
We have and then the soil processing takes place in this area here. There was the storage bins were never constructed by the.
I'm not sure if they were moved, but they weren't there.
Yeah. There's also an existing one-story garage, small one-story garage. It's just for like property maintenance, generally just like a small machine shed, really. There's an existing well on site, which provides water. I believe that initially was for dust control and just general irrigation. There was, I believe the original approval was for up to 3 employees on site. Those were the general conditions of the original permit. So this proposal incorporates a So RKB continues to use they continue to use the yard as originally approved, with soil processing going on on an as-needed basis. He wants to move his White Plains trucking.
Well, our office is in White Plains, our trucks are parked in Montrose.
In Montrose.
Yeah.
He wants to move the Montrose trucking yard to here, where it's closer to, basically he runs the trucks out of Effle.
Yeah, we're contracted to haul our stuff out.
Yeah. So he's got 6 trucks that he wants to keep on site, and he wants to construct a 3,500 square foot garage for parking of the 4 trucks, as well as general maintenance of the vehicles. And other than that, continue to process soil on an as-needed basis. So generally, how the operation goes is they're gonna leave the site at 6:30. He has 6 triaxles. They're gonna leave the site at 6:30 in the morning, head out to Effle, and run all day up and down Route 9, and
Which is what we do today.
yeah.
And then they usually return between 3 and 3:30. We're usually done for the day.
Right. So part of that amended, an important part of that amended site plan approval is they're currently approved to run 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. He wants to modify that to 6:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. an extra half hour earlier for his operation there. And he's gonna, the garage is gonna have an office. So we'll be incorporating a septic system and a water service from the existing water well. And he wants to finish up the storage bins, which are not there now, as part of the original site plan approval, and just continue with the soil processing.
Okay. Ron, I guess we'll start with Ron.
Sure. Just before we get into that, can you just identify the capacities of the triaxles so the board understands the size of these vehicles?
The standard 20-yard triaxles.
And the issue of the berm that Polhemus was required to put in at the time of the 2012 approval, are any aspects of this proposed project going to be visible from the street? Or are they all going to be hidden from the berm?
Yeah, I mean, this vegetation in here is pretty thick with the pine trees. I don't, you know, I believe that the position of the garage now is gonna maximize the screening on site, as well as screening the operation of the soil processing behind. That's kind of.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted it on the record to understand, you know, relative visual impacts, which you'll further evaluate as you go through this process.
Yeah, I mean, the vegetation in here is pretty thick.
Right.
I mean, those trees are pretty big at this point, those pine trees that were planted.
Yeah, the intent of the original approval was to conceal any truck parking and any of the soil processing, you know,
Right.
mitigate the visibility of those aspects.
Right. The previous approval did not incorporate a garage.
Right.
Or any
Right.
any further development of structures. This one does, and so that's the proposal that we have.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as the applicant indicates, this is the first appearance of the application before the board. There's some administrative things that can be resolved at this point, and they relate to just identifying or classifying the project as a major project pursuant to the code based on its size. Then with respect to seeker, I believe you should qualify or classify it as an unlisted seeker action and then determine whether you want to have a coordinated or uncoordinated environmental review. Given the similar magnitude to the original approval, I suspect you'd want to accomplish an uncoordinated review, which this board is certainly entitled to do. And then there's referrals to make, and then more specifically, you want to determine whether you want to have a site inspection to evaluate the environmental considerations of the proposal.
Who are the referrals to, Ron? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Who are the referrals to, Ron?
Well, specifically, there's the aquifer underneath the site, which should be referred to Conservation Board, just for their comment. And there should be a referral to county planning, since it's along the corridor, or just, it's within the 500 feet of the corridor, so those things could be accomplished.
So, before we take questions, I just want to drive to a fundamental point that you've raised, Ron, in your memo to us, which is the use table assessment of light industry versus service business.
If we just get into the issue, they're proposing activities very similar to the 2012 site plan approval that Polhemus obtained. And he specifically was approved for a contractor's yard and material processing facility, very similar to what's being offered in this application. Unfortunately, the current zoning code doesn't permit that use on the site. So typically what is accomplished is the applicant makes application to the code enforcement officer for a determination as to what use the applicant can be considered under. I've identified either light industry or service businesses as two permitted uses in that zone, but it's for the code enforcement officer to make that determination.
How much does it change our work depending on which of these two it's judged as?
Now, it won't specifically change it, but it should be identified, since it's no longer the same authorized use for that site.
Let him finish. Go ahead, Ron. Can you let Ron finish, please? Ron, go ahead.
I'm just saying that it's a different approval being sought than the original approval that was granted in 2012. So that determination should first be done by the code enforcement officer. But you can continue to move this project along, because at the end of the day, one of those uses will be identified by the CEO.
I guess what I'm saying is, how much does it change our interpretation or assessment of the property? If the CEO comes back and says light industry versus it comes back as service business, how does that change our interpretation of what we're looking at?
No, it won't change it in any respect. It just will identify the current use of the site as being one that conforms to zoning.
Okay, all right, Jason, go ahead.
There can be two uses, right? I mean, we have the existing use, which is light industry. We're not expanding that use. We're not expanding the soil processing.
The original approval from 2012 identifies it as a contractor's yard.
Yeah, that's what that's what it is now. They've continued to use it as a contractor's yard.
Right.
They're not expanding that use.
Well, part of the filing with the code enforcement officer is going to verify that there has been no lapse in that use on the site. That'll all come out of a statement of use that we've recommended that you file. But that just sets the stage for the board to continue to process the application.
Okay.
Right?
And then we have another new use, which is the service business, the trucking aspect.
Right. This board doesn't make those determinations. It's for the CEO to accomplish that.
Okay.
I guess what I'm asking Ron, and Steve, you can weigh in as well, please, is it worthwhile for us to await that classification before we proceed because of potential different views on the project if it has a different classification?
Under any decision made by the CEO, I'm certain he's going to identify it as one of those permitted uses. So it's just a matter for you to have that in the record.
Okay.
So it won't have any bearing on.
No.
There is a worst-case scenario for the applicant here, where they go to the code enforcement officer, and he says contractors' yards are no longer permitted uses in the OC district. You cannot modify or expand a non-conforming use. That includes changes, like putting other uses on the property. You got to go to the zoning board, and I also find that it's not a service use, and I find it's not light industrial, and so you got to go to the ZBA. I do not think that will happen, but if it did happen, it would change this board's processing.
And this is why I would rather personally, I'll take the board's view, I'd rather before we start doing work and assessing and site visits and the like, to then stop and then have it go to the ZBA and then have it come back, I think that's not a great use of our time. Because if it then goes to the ZBA and they spend X number of months, we're gonna forget the project, we're gonna go back to another site visit, or I just think it's not, I'd rather do it straight as opposed to crooked. That's my view. I'll take my colleagues, I'll take a majority of the view of the board.
I agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking Riverview, I'm thinking having to go back several times. I mean, in a way, all right, Jason, how much impermeable surfaces are we talking about?
We're not increasing any impervious. All of the proposed construction is over the existing gravel work area.
Okay, so the only, all right.
There's an increased impervious area for the building, which doesn't exist today.
We're putting the building on an impervious, on a surface that's already impervious. The building is going on in an impervious surface already.
But other than that, out in the yard or anything, and you don't have, and you're not installing a wash station?
No.
That makes it easier.
Is the CEO working on this topic?
There's been no statement of use submitted to them.
Yeah, the
Well, I
statement-
think that seems like an important.
They have to do that.
So I think that seems like, so, can you do that, please? Okay, why don't we just get that done?
Okay.
And hopefully he'll have the determination, then we can move forward in the next month.
Okay.
I think that seems like the right approach. Folks, straw poll for waiting for these guys to get their clarity, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna see if we could move them along, but let's get that in.
Okay.
Let's get the statement of use in.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Alderman Neal.
No, that's all I was saying. I was trying to think about how we could keep them moving, but if they haven't filed a statement of use yet,
You can
We don't want to put undue pressure on
declare
it.
it a major action, you can type it an unlisted action, you could declare yourselves responsible agency and seek review. You can make your 239M referral.
I don't want to do any referrals until.
You don't want to do any?
I
Okay.
want to wait till they know. I have no problem saying it's a major project, because it's a major project regardless of which of those pieces, but I feel like we're doing it in pieces, and I'd like to.
Initial secret determination, call it a day.
Okay, I'll take a motion then to declare this a major project.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, abstention, motion passes. Do we have to declare us the uncoordinated review for secret?
Declare that you are going to be responsible agency in an uncoordinated secret review of an unlisted action.
All right, a motion for us to be the lead agency in an uncoordinated action for secret review, please. Thank you, Peter. Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dennis. All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed, abstentions, motion passes. Okay, please file what you've got to file. Let's get the CEO's view. Any other new business before this? Sir, Dennis, please.
I just have a quick
Please.
question, though, on the assessment form. There's a discrepancy regarding times of operation. 5:30 on here, 3:30 on the, forgot where else I saw it.
Oh, yeah, I'll check that. I saw that on Ron's.
I mean, it's a minor thing, just for clarity, that's all.
Yeah, I just have a question. The possible referrals, does this project need to go to the DEC? Because I know mulch is regulated, Part 360 regulations for mulch as a transfer station.
Yeah, he doesn't have any mulching going on.
So it's not, it doesn't need to have a permit, doesn't need to be registered as a mulch transfer facility or a mulch?
No, I don't believe there's any mulch.
You're just doing soils.
Soils, that's it. Just soil?
Yeah, no, there's
mixing of
no wood
soils?
products.
Okay.
What is on the other side of Horseman's Trail?
On the other side of, over here?
No, on the, whatever that road is, it runs up to the
Skyline.
north. Yeah, that, what's on the other side there?
This is Mario Gregorio, his stone guy, the stone mason.
I have one quick question for clarity, Jason.
Yeah, this is Mario, Lions Soil Mine is over here. Lions owns this. You got the mobile home park, Classy Chassis, you got Padala, Mid Hudson.
Just a quick question, again, for clarity. When the trucks are, they're gonna be going north on 9, what exit or from Horse Trail Road there, are you going to be leaving off of Skyline Drive or?
Well, that's the way, there's signage there now that says that if you go in 9, you have to make a left out of the yard, and south, you have to make a right out of the yard.
Yeah, part of that, the 2012 was that there's signage in front of this entrance directing.
As
If you-
it is now.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Joe, did you want to ask something? No. You're good? Okay, hearing nothing else? Anyone? Okay, thank you, sir. Any new business? Yeah, sir, you're the Vastas, yes? If you want to come up, I know you're technically on the agenda, so come on up if you want to say something to just hit to the mic and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I want to thank the board for letting me speak tonight. I know you guys are busy, it's late, and I'm not on the agenda. We have a application for,
Identify yourself, please.
my name is Sal Vasta, and my daughter Amanda Vasta is the landowner at 9 Cliffside. It's an upland. I was brought to my attention tonight that there was a correspondence sent out to the board pertaining to some, we're maintaining the road right now for the winter months, and we're cleaning out catch basins, and we're trying to apply material so that the plow trucks and people on the road can manage the road. Obviously, you know, this place has demons up there, and most of them destroy the cars. So I'm making an effort to try to alleviate this for the local residents. We don't live up there. We're an application for a building permit. So I just wanted to, I was a little, I was upset a little bit because the one person that made these comments to me seems to be the only person that has his views sent to you people that mean everything to the town. I mean, you guys have a lot to say. So, and, I really don't have anything else to say. I was just concerned about this correspondence, and hopefully this won't have any effect on our application, and we can move forward.
Yeah, look, sir, the lawyer, we all read the letter. Certainly I read the letters, and the lawyer that is representing you, I guess, is doing it pro bono for you as a family friend. I forget the gentleman's name. He made a very thoughtful point. He said, any anonymous letters, there's a reason why the person's anonymous, and that's not great, and we agree that's not great. That's why I ask people to identify themselves when they come and speak in front of us. So I promise you that there'll be no prejudice against you and your daughter as your application runs through because someone decides an anonymous letter. I certainly speak for my colleagues here knowing that would absolutely not be the case. So do not worry, okay? All right, the application's the application. This is not.
I know there was some other residents here that were.
Well, we're not having a
upset
public hearing on this matter.
I'm just happy to hear that. I wanted to support that the majority of people that live in the area support him and
Yeah, thank you. Good, okay, all right, very good.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you.
Okay, we'll do, the process will be the process, so let's keep it wending its way through. Any new business, folks? All right, hearing none, that's the end, but I would like to invite the board members up here for a slightly goofy signing ceremony. We're gonna stand for this.
Motion for. We're gonna do it during the meeting.
Oh, yeah, motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to
Okay,
adjourn.
thank you, all right. What's all?